Three-time world champion Muhammad Ali was once boarding a commercial flight, and he gets on and he sits down, and a flight attendant comes along and says, please buckle up. Of course, he ignored her, and a little while later, she came back and she said, sir, please buckle up. And in the way that only Muhammad Ali could do, he kind of folds his arms and he looks and says, Superman don't need no seatbelt. And she looks back at him without missing a beat. And she says, Superman don't need no plane either. Now buckle up. Well, in this industry, in this world, with what's happening now, with the changes that are coming at us, we had all better buckle up. We're living in an amazing time. Almost everything seems to be changing. Almost everything seems to be accelerating. Almost everything seems to be connecting. Let's look back at our world's history, and you can see the acceleration. Go back to the ancient world. It lasted 3,000 years. The medieval period, 1,000 years. Industrial era, about 100 years. Post-industrial society lasted only a few decades before giving way to the information age with PCs in the 70s and 80s, to the internet in the 90s. And now we can measure periods in months, and we're rushing into a new age of connectivity. The day when every person and every device will be connected to every other person, and every other device is getting closer. It wasn't that long ago when, to do most deep research, you had to physically travel around the world. And now today, broadband connections are a given. The world's information is at your fingertips. We've shifted from the PC and laptop to mobile devices. Content, it's increasingly in the cloud. Virtually everything will eventually be wired to the network, from your refrigerator to your car. Location-based services, they've only just begun. Foursquare, Gowalla, and other location-based services will have a profound impact on society. And then there's this trend. Personalized content will be taken to an entirely new level. When I think of personalized content, I think of cookies on my computer, kind of maybe giving me suggested ads that may be relevant to me. It's going to go far beyond that. There are now billboards with facial recognition capabilities that can provide customized ads just to you. And biometric wristbands are now available that can analyze tiny microscopic changes in your body's sweat glands. Would have been a great tool for someone to meet the parents. And now, a new Ferrari is under development that essentially monitors your brain activity and your blood pressure and helps control the car. And then there's my personal favorite. University of Washington is doing research with contact lenses with literally a virtual reality overlay. Contact lenses with a virtual reality overlay. You have no idea right now what I'm really looking at when I'm looking at you. The future has arrived. And as we're experiencing this dizzying technological pace of change, our industry is going through its own remarkable change. Last year, many in the book business wondered, is digital really here? And believe it or not, I get calls every month, people saying, is this a passing fad? Can we kind of wait this out? Well, let's get that out of the way right here. Right? Make a note to yourself. It is here. Change is happening. Retailers, librarians, publishers, authors, every part of the content supply chain, everyone in the business, like it or not, is experiencing it. No one is immune. The form of the book has changed from stone, clay, tablets to the ebook. And the very definition of a book is changing. Wikipedia's definition was updated on Sunday morning, as a matter of fact, on the book, and not by me. Look at the changes in retail, right? We've had the bookstore, the mall store, the superstore, then .com fulfillment, and now digital devices and digital books for sale. And libraries have been reinventing themselves from what I knew as a quiet space for manual research. Now they're vibrant communities with social spaces, sometimes coffee bars, digital access. And educators are beginning to change. Customized textbooks, rental models like Chegg and Book Renter, and VitalSource is now powering digital textbooks that allow social networking and students to share notes. The entire book industry's business model is changing. Well, whenever there's rapid change, some people come out against the new development in memorable ways. I think of Mike Hyatt's blog, and he listed a few quotes that I thought were pretty good. In 1442, someone said this. Someone said, "I will never get used to a book. I just love unrolling a scroll." And for those of you who like to read at night, there was some against the light bulb said, "I will never convert to the electric light. I just love the smell of candles and the flickering of the light." And then anytime an industry goes into flux, experts come out of the woodwork to provide their predictions on what the future will hold. Here's a few that didn't quite work out. In 1966, Time magazine dismissed e-commerce. Long before anyone had ever heard of it, they said remote shopping will flop because people like to get out of the house and handle the merchandise. And Thomas Edison himself, he predicted the book on a record was far superior to print and that paper textbooks would be obsolete. He actually predicted that how long ago? And today, all the predictions are around what percentage of books will be digital. Forrester Research says ebooks will comprise half of all trade books by 2014. And then there's this prediction. Print is dead. Again. But it isn't that easy. Print will coexist with digital. Digital's here, it's real, it's growing at triple digits, but print will be here. Different formats and changes, but it will be here. The point is this: bet your company, bet your strategy on a single prediction, and you better be sure you're right. Look at what's happening today, right? 12 months ago, I was talking about the future of the ebook, and we thought it's not just going to be the digital version of a print book, but it'll be enhanced. And we kind of saw that coming. But who would have thought some of these things, right? Go back 12 months. Who would have thought that the iPad would be a resounding success, so resounding, not only creating a category of new device, but even making a run at laptop computers? Apple sold over 7 million iPads in the holiday season alone. And then there was this prediction. Once the iPad came out, what was the next prediction, right? The Kindle was dead, everyone said. But in fact, the Kindle was not dead. In fact, Amazon is now selling 115 Kindle books for every 100 paperback books. And who would have thought that 1/3 of all iPad owners would also own a Kindle? And then who would have thought this? Barnes & Noble would reinvent itself, would acquire an ebook retailer, would launch a new bookstore, launch the Nook, and now this retailer is earning accolades for its hardware. And the agency model would be introduced, and now discussions are happening globally. Territorial rights are being questioned in a digital world. And one more, who would have thought? At Digital Book World, statistics showing that women buy 2.1 ebooks and men 1.7 ebooks. And I heard someone say it this way and wrote on their blog, "Women prefer ebooks over men." Well, maybe you would have guessed that. All of this change. But now what? What do we need to think about? We all have to have a strategy or we'll be like Columbus, right? He set off. He didn't know where he was going. He got there. He didn't know where he was. And when he got back, he didn't know where he'd been. So first, you have to understand your purpose. How do you differentiate your company? And at Ingram, we started looking at our own differentiation points. We started wrestling with this. We started realizing it wasn't about being the largest trade wholesaler, international reach, libraries, print-on-demand leadership, or digital warehouse. It wasn't any of those, and you know that, and I'm not going to go into a little commercial. Though wasn't that clever, the way I kind of just worked that in? Our theory was we could really combine all of our assets. We could combine all this, and we could talk to publishers and say, we're not smart enough to figure it all out for you, but we believe we have a recipe here, if you mix this all up, that will fit for you. And every publisher chooses to use us differently. We have new models with Springer. We have new models with Macmillan and Zondervan and O'Reilly. Everyone may use us or others differently. The lesson for us was to stay true to our purpose and let publishers tell us their problems and get creative with us. And let's also cover what your purpose isn't, and we had to wrestle with this one too. Your purpose is not to preserve your existing infrastructure. Next, if it's not a key differentiator, if it's not tied to your purpose, consider whether it's weighing you down or holding you back. Some say, let's just keep everything in place. We'll keep everything in place for the print. We'll just add the digital businesses into the mix. Well, I wish it were that easy. Usually there's a finite amount of capital, and doing both things becomes much more of a challenge. I love this quote Jim Whitehurst said. He said, every industry is a brittle optimized system built around the way the world was 20 years ago. Well, now, unlike many past predictions, this time the industry is actually beating most of them. So for years we were predicting ebooks and they didn't come. This time the predictions tend to afterwards look back and say it's higher, it's faster, it's happening. And if we really got to 40, 50% of all trade books being digital, I'm afraid that all of us have some fundamental and very difficult work ahead of us. Almost everyone has heard of the U.S. military general Norman Schwarzkopf. And early in his distinguished military career, when he was a second lieutenant, I think stationed in Fort Benning, Georgia, he was traveling with his commanding officer in a Jeep. And as he's going along, he sees three men with a howitzer. And he's watching them, and here's what he notices. Right before it's fired, one of the men kind of runs back about 30 feet. And so he asks his commanding officer, why is that guy running back? And the commanding officer said, standard operating procedure. And so he thought about that, and that wasn't he really wanted to know the answer. So he went over to the three soldiers and he said, can you tell me when that, you're about to fire the howitzer, somebody's running back, why is that? And the soldier said, standard operating procedure. And that really didn't sit well with Norman Schwarzkopf. He kept investigating and digging, thinking, what is this all about? And finally, he found out the reason why. Way back in the Civil War, when a cannon was fired, it was one of the soldiers' jobs to run back and grab the reins of the horses so they couldn't run away. And that industry, that practice had been built into the training models. It became standard operating procedure. A practice that hadn't been needed in 100 years was built in. Long after the horses disappeared, the practice of running back for them remained. Our industry is in the middle of some of the biggest, most sweeping changes we've ever faced. As publishers, in anybody touching this industry, what are we doing today that doesn't make sense anymore? Acceleration into the future will require innovation, new ways of thinking. How many times do you hear a form of its standard operating procedure at your company? How many times a day do you find yourself running back and grabbing horses? The book, In Search of Excellence, written by Tom Peters and Robert Waterman, first published in 1982. For years, it was one of the biggest, most widely read business books for a few years. And 40 to 50% of all the companies cited as models of excellence, no longer exist. Why? I heard Scott McCain talk about this, and he said, because the company history got in the way. Because the company had always done a certain thing, they couldn't change, they couldn't modify. Or new technology, new methods of distribution came along and they were unable to adapt. How do we make certain to change? Because some companies will not make it if they fail to adapt to the changing conditions of tomorrow's world. Here's something for your notes. Don't let your company's past get in the way of your company's future. It's an exciting time. As we let go of the past, we're now entering a new era of experimentation. Here's just a few experiments that we're watching, right? The rise of new pricing and bundling experience. Thomas Nelson announced, for instance, that you can buy the hardcover and get the audio and the ebook versions for free. And the rise of short-form content. A 5,000-word writing is too small for the traditional supply chain. And so now new models are emerging, Workman and Kindle Singles and others. Enhanced ebooks are on the rise, whether it's Ansel Adams or Nixon Land or this one, The Last Boy, Mickey Mantle. Publishers are now adding video and audio and games, alternate endings, interviews with authors, changing the nature of a book. And there's the social networking of books. Many books have always had a social element. We've loved to talk about them. We form clubs around them. We share them. But there are now services that are out there like Rethink Books, and it's taking it to an entirely new level. Rethink allows readers to share notes, share bookshelves, and brings people together globally around a book in a conversation. Well, now let's step way out there. We're at a technology conference, so let's just be a little creative. What if we applied the technologies that I discussed earlier to our industry? And before you kind of reject it or think that this idea or that idea is ridiculous or whatever, just suspend judgment, if you would, and let's think about what's possible. Because it's not hard to imagine digital's going to grow. If you don't realize that, you might be in the wrong conference. But what could be beyond that? So just for fun, these aren't my predictions, but just for fun. What if an author allowed biometrics to change the ending of the book based on your mood? Or what if you could be reading a book and then jump into your car and the audio would pick right up where you left off? What about this? New location-based services. What if everything in the book, character names and places, changed based on your location? Right? Imagine, say, Stieg Larsson's trilogy being read in Newark, New Jersey. It's kind of like the version of Dragon Tattoo meets Snooki in the Jersey Shore. Right? What about this? Online retailers. For years, they have the edge because they have all this information collected about their customers. But what if a physical retailer changed the model? Work is now being done to allow you to check in with your mobile device, and in the future it may even be facial recognition that sees that you're there, and all of a sudden customized coupons could come to your device, or maybe you could see what friends of yours are having coffee and are inviting you to join them. Instead of not knowing you until you check out, the store could customize the entire experience from the start. So there are many, many, many examples of ideas that you could take the new technologies into the industry. But when you experiment with anything, any new models, fail quickly. I've learned this the hard way. If you don't fail at all, it means you're not trying enough, right? So failure's good. But if you do fail, you want to fail quickly. There is nothing worse than failing and going down in flames slowly. That is the worst. And next, we all need to adapt our organizations, skill sets. Things are changing. Joshua Bell, he's one of the greatest violinists of our time, maybe ever. He began taking violin lessons after the age of 4. At the age of 4, he started taking violin because his mother found him. She was playing the piano, and he had taken rubber bands and stretched them on his dresser. And he began to pluck the rubber bands to replicate what she was playing on the piano. And he won a Grammy. He's performed all over the world with practically every famous orchestra there is. But in 2007, the Washington Post asked him this. They said, would the renowned violinist who can command $1,000 per minute play in the Washington, D.C. subway for tips? And on January 12th, 2007, Bell put on a baseball cap and he played his heart out for 43 minutes. 6 classical pieces, some of the most complex pieces ever written, on a multi-million-dollar Stradivarius violin. So how much do you think he made in tips? All right, the experiment was videotaped on YouTube, and you can see they counted 1,097 people pass by, and only 7 stopped to listen to him. Only 1 recognized him. Bell collected $52.17, and $20 of it was from the person who recognized him. Change happens at the periphery. It's not always obvious to us. It's not always right in front of us. If the answer was plain, it would be easy. But what keeps me up at night as we look at adapting our organizations, as we look at culture change, as we look at skill set change for the new era that we're in, one of the things that keeps me up at night is talent that we're not leveraging in our own organization. Who in our own organizations may be like Joshua Bell, amazingly talented and completely overlooked on the periphery? Talent is often hidden in your organization. Finding it, cultivating it, bringing it out is hard work. We as an industry need to adapt our organizations, whether it's new skill sets, transforming the culture, that work goes on. And we're starting to see some great results with this, but we've also made plenty of mistakes along the way. So our industry has moved. If you joined the business for this, I'm very sorry to inform you that what you're going to get is this. In the midst of all this change, let me tell you, everything's not going to change, right? Publishers will still make financial bets. The role of curation will remain. Publishers still bestow a gift of legitimacy and status on authors. That will continue. Now, TOC is very strict on time limitations, and the clock is running down. But I once heard of a man, and he was supposed to speak for about 20 minutes, and he just kept going on, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and people are getting restless, right? About an hour into it, the man who introduced him picked up a gavel and threw it at him, and it missed, and it hit a lady right in the front row. And he runs over and he says, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she says, "No, I can still hear him. Hit me again." So I hope you don't feel that way, although Andrew's like reaching for his iPhone and getting ready to pitch it at me. But I'm very excited about our industry's future. We don't have all the answers. I know I don't have all the answers, but I'm thrilled to be part of it all. I want to wrap up with this final thought. The only thing that I'm sure of in this period of change and uncertainty is we cannot stand still. Our world is moving, our industry is moving, and all of us need to be on the move. There's an old African proverb that says, "Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up." It knows it must run faster than the fastest lion or it will be killed. And every morning a lion wakes up and it knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. It doesn't matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle, when the sun comes up, you better be running. Thank you.